On this episode of Gen XYZ,
You're looking it up right now. It's really fun to say. Just don't even.
Beyonce says don't use blue light on black skin. Okay.
So we'll conscious.
Yeah, keep going. I need to get this out of my head. Hi, I'm Ricky. I'm an athletic trainer and Reiki master.
Hi, I'm Beth. I'm a journalist working in media and tech.
Welcome to Gen XYZ, a BIPOC commentary show where we discuss pop culture, media, tech, and more, all while dancing across the aisles that divide us.
Follow us at Gen XYZ on social media.
And since you're here, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on your bell notifications, like and leave a comment. We saw a jam-packed evening full of powerful women, effective women from all across the country. We finally got to hear Kamala's speech. We got to see Obama.
Obama, for like the first time, was really challenging to Trump, which he has held back on doing for the past almost 4 years.
He knew he only had one opportunity for it to like really be effective, to go after Trump. What Obama did is normally what the VP candidate does, right? At this point, it's like you bash the incumbent or the competition, you talk about all their negatives, just so that the actual presidential candidate, he can then, or she can just out themselves.
Like you kind of gave them a platform, like this is why the other candidate's horrible, this is why, right?
And then the presidential candidate can just be sort of like human and not worry about being, quote unquote, petty or coming off divisive. You can just kind of like talk about themselves. And because Obama hit hard at Trump, that allowed for Kamala to just tell us about who she is. And the softer side of Kamala, I think so far on the trail,
That's true.
Slowly, but a lot of people's image when they think of Kamala is in those these interrogations, Kavanaugh, and of who was the little
Gato. Little attorney.
What's his name?
No, I just want to keep this needs to just keep on happening.
Or Barr was
Se pra isso eu já aceitei. Eu tô dentro, eu assino onde for, assino como.
You're looking it up right now.
Yeah, keep going. I need to get this out of my head. Oh my God. A lot has happened since old Jeffy Sessions.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot has happened. I mean, it's hard to remember what happened like last week. Like women get judged usually a lot harsher on being tough.
Hillary Clinton, she had to be very careful because, I don't know, like she could have become the headline of the night if she was a little too petty. She had her one.
I wish Donald Trump knew how to be a president.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone kind of just, they all kind of toes the company line, which is how these things usually work. Lots of warm and fuzzy. I mean, I do admit I was tearing up on some of it, especially talking about like the immigrant part. My dad having been an immigrant and talking about diversity and being biracial, like tears.
They really picked some great examples of how Trump's policies and the actions he's taken, how they've affected what is the heart of America.
The rhetoric in the country now is a lot more divisive racially.
And because we kind of can already guess what Trump's message is going to be next week, he's going to try to wrangle in those sort of middle-aged white suburban women and with fear tactics, fear mongering about their safety and about immigrants and people of color moving into your neighborhood and making the crime go up and all that.
Right.
But I think we saw the Democrats present a version of America that I think will resonate with those women.
I think he's even like mentioned statistic, he being Trump, that like 30% of the suburbs are now minorities. It's not what the suburbs were in the 50s and 60s. And a lot of suburban women are leaning much more toward Biden and Harris. 66%, actually, here it is. It's from NPR. 66% of suburban women disapproved of the job President Trump is doing well in an NPR PBS NewsHour poll. And 58% even said they strongly disapprove. You never quite know if Trump is really believes it or if he really just sees it as it has traction. There is kind of this overpowering amount of like people of color who are threatening and scary. Has to have some traction or he wouldn't keep with that message.
He's getting some numbers from somewhere.
Why'd you call my phone?
I think there definitely is people that do feel threatened. they don't quite understand what the protests are about. They do feel threatened. Not that the numbers necessarily say that, but that is how they feel.
People's identity is attached to their views, but be it political or even like whether or not they like pineapple on their pizza. For someone to disprove what you know to be true is almost to question your existence. For me to be wrong means I'm questioning my whole identity, which means like, what is life? So like, no, I'm gonna push back, like I don't want to do that work.
I mean, there's definitely part of that experience that you don't have. I mean, you may not be racist, you just don't have that perspective. And we all have biases because of our perspective.
I wonder how much, sort of self-love and self-respect there is there in that base of Trump's, because it's like, again, they're voting for someone that's actively voting against and putting policies against their specific interests.
There's a lot of work to do. Like, I can't believe that Kamala Harris is only the second Black female senator ever. Like, so it may look that like, oh yeah, the minorities and the women are taking over, but no, let's put that in perspective. Yeah, there's been like one.
We can have effective change if we have a presidency in place that will even allow for that change to even be an idea. And you're going to get that opportunity with a Biden-Harris administration. They're literally saying if another 4 years of Trump, like America could be like not what we know it to be. And it's a scary thing to say. And even the guy said, and I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm really, I want to hesitate to say it, but look at where we are after 4 years. Imagine another 4 years from now.
Some of this I don't think is about necessarily policy. It is about like the framing of government. Like a lot of because he came in so new and so fresh, and like every president before had been like a lawyer, they had some civil service, they were in the military. Having him with no experience, he did not know how government works. So I mean, he kind of created his own roles, and that's kind of the question. Because even if you like Trump, what about it? Who will be the next president? And if you disagree with her policies and the balance system is broken, is that what you want? Because I don't think it's so hard to keep up with the headlines. It's easy to lose sight that, like, for example, COVID, he signed an executive order that said, hey, yeah, like, we'll just give you money to all the states. But that's something that Congress usually does. And then it's ratified. Like, that's outside the system of how things are balanced. So, I mean, there's kind of this, even if it's a great idea, I mean, part of the reason we have a check and balance for a reason, so that if somebody that you disagree with becomes the top of our country, that his power is checked. I mean, but that's kind of a deeper dive. I mean, we're talking about kind of constitutional law and things. There hasn't been much proof that he likes to read. So, like, I don't know if he even knows. So I think it's been more about his brand and his success.
Again, an ex-DHS employee. What are they?
Yeah.
He was giving an example of when there was a hurricane and Trump didn't want to issue an evacuation.
He said, do the hurricanes always spin this direction? He meant counterclockwise. Now, that's called the Coriolis effect. Same thing that causes toilets to spin the other direction in Australia, a follow-up question he also had. But this is what the president was focused on. Americans were in the path of a deadly hurricane. He needed to get out there and tell them to evacuate, and he was just marveled at the way that hurricanes spin, in a way a third grader might, learning about earth science. This is the president that we're talking about to keep us safe.
Because he saw like people preparing for it, like in the deep south, and he's like, look at the base, they're not afraid of a hurricane, they're preparing, they're getting their supplies, they're hunkering down. I'm not gonna give the evacuation order, they can survive through this. And then one of the advisors was like, sir, but it could be hard for us messaging wise if the hurricane actually does a lot of damage and the base suffer from that hurricane if we don't do that. And he was just like, ding, oh, it's gonna hurt me, it's about me. Okay, issue the evacuation order.
Right. I mean, because there definitely has been pushback from within his own administration. That's part of the reason that there has been such turnover. People who have been fighting for the way that government kind of used to be or has operated. And we also have, we have PACs, Republican PACs, that are just looking for anybody but Trump. So this is not just Democrats who are attacking the Republican Party. This is also within the party itself. And like a quick reminder, once again, there is some turnover in administration, but we've never seen it to the level. There's been a lot of things in the past 4 years that we haven't seen in DC politics.
Yeah, and that ability to get pushback and for that to then mean change, like that's what separates us, the United States, from a country, say, like China, which, as we spoke about last time, is going through some things,
Yeah.
particularly with Hong Kong and them fighting for their own democracy or maintaining some form of democracy.
I'm sorry, you cut out actually.
Maybe I just can't get too loud.
Let's both talk and see if that's what it is. If we're both talking, you need to talk too.
1, 2, 3, go. Hi,
We're
Beth.
talking right now. Oh yeah, now. No, that's what it is. We can't both talk.
Okay.
So we'll conscious. Maybe you can just go like.
Oh, Beth, you had one more thing about the convention.
Well, one, I mean, it was very liberal and Democrat to cover so many freaking topics. The environment, there was gun violence, there was immigration, there was domestic violence, there's dozens of topics, like, which I think can be confusing to a voter. Like sometimes they just want, we know that like a lot of people, they just want to hear like quick sound bites, have very simple kind of ideas. Like there was no like one pushing theme. So, I mean, I thought that was just so democratic.
It was very much a 7-layer dip of issues. I think it was just casting a wide net and just making sure every person listening resonated with. There was nothing that they covered last night that you couldn't relate to. Like somebody was affected by at least one of like the 8 things they brought up last night, and I think that might have been purposeful to get the attention of America, you know?
Yeah, I agree with that. Personally, like it was just so nice to see so many like women, people of color, immigrants, just having a whole community of people who are all different. As somebody whose dad is an immigrant, it was just kind of beautiful. So Republicans, take a note on that.
Pay attention. It was so nice. It was so honest. It wasn't even put on. It's just an objective display of what America like can and should and used to be. And I don't care how right-leaning you are. Didn't that feel nice? Didn't that feel like a nice warm hug last night? Like, don't you want to live in that bosom of America?
Like e pluribus unum, out of many one. That is our slogan. I mean, America was founded, unless you're Native American, we were all immigrants at one time. We have always been a melting pot. And I love kind of the opening with the Constitution.
I understand America has work to do. When I say like nestle in the bosom, I know that bosom has development. But
you want to develop that bosom of America?
You know, I'm such a boob man. I wanted to say, speaking of the beginning, Kerry Washington.
In order to form a more perfect union, we say more perfect because our union is not without flaws.
There was a conscious sort of moment of saying like, we need to be more perfect, like continually perfect. It's always a work in progress. And I think that was a great thing to mention.
Snaps us to America and the Constitution.
I think they've convinced some people that like Joe Biden is likable, and now Joe Biden has to convince people that Joe Biden is likable.
I really want to see an episode of Parks and Rec where like Leslie Knope watches it live. That would have been amazing.
Congratulations for your public service.
And I just want to say thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
You're very handsome.
I think we're all done.
Speaking of live things, we live tweeted. We tried to.
It was a disaster.
Hard. Live tweeting is very difficult to like be witty and use the right hashtags and then like keep up with the pace of what you're actually watching. But we got 2 retweets. Did you see that?
Yeah, we got some retweets. Yeah.
We got our first retweets. I'm so excited. Like, we're doing the thing. And then we went live on Instagram after Kamala's speech.
It's lit out here. I like this country a lot. I thought I was doing.
And we learned that we shouldn't have wine when we do that.
So there were just technical issues, I believe.
Okay, in light of last night's epic success, we're gonna maybe dive in a little bit more on Kamala, Beth.
Even before she was picked, women's groups, because of last time with Hillary Clinton, they were like, okay, let's just prep media, like get ready. Stuff has gotten like real racist and real sexist, like real quick as soon as she was announced. Trump, like right after, said that like, suburban housewives won't want her. And so there's been a lot of things that are kind of been kind of dog whistles maybe for sexism and racism. So I feel a little bit mixed saying some of these things because like, are we propagating it?
Virginia Mayer calls her Aunt Jemima. Okay. Someone who maybe doesn't know what that image represents or where that comes from might just think, oh, he just called her a pancake box character, like, no, Aunt Jemima is like steeped in the whole mammyism.
Mammyism and like outright slavery. And then, and so like Black female stereotypes.
And I'm just now catching up, so I'm not going to be very smooth in this part, but since the time of slavery, Black women have been dealt the worst hands. And there's this whole thing of sort of like propping them up as these commodities. They have to have children and they have to mind the fields. And like, so slave owners kind of did revere them in that way, as in like, they were like, we need to take care of these women, but we're also going to them, and also we're going to take away their rights and their children's rights, the
right.
children that were of the slave owner, and
Weird.
This whole idea of Black female matriarch, there was all kinds of theories of the Black matriarchy being it's going to be the downfall of the free slave race. That whole Aunt Jemima, that image just puts all of that into one person, sort of like the nice, hey master, can I make you pancakes tonight? That whole
right.
What these white slave owners revered as like the perfect like house slave.
And suck in.
Mammy, here's for Scarlet's pickles.
You can take that all back to the kitchen. I won't need to buy it.
Oh, yes, you is. You's going to eat every mouthful of this.
Oh, I'm not.
Sometimes it would be like a very motherly figure for them. So they would have like a very sweet kind of, but how complicated, because you're also ordering them or selling their children. Like,
and they would raise the slave owners' children.
Right.
They would breastfeed them. So many things wrong with referencing that. It just tells you how not far we've come since that time. The fact that someone can reference that image and it still has an immediate, we know what you're doing, like
all the way up to the 1960s. You'll also see kind of a similar kind of idea in the South, particularly where they have a cook or somebody helping raise the children. So like, I mean, that extended all the way up to mid last century. There's just so much to unpack in just that term.
And put some respect on Black women. Black women are the backbone of this country. There's no denying it. And they did so much for this country in building it. And they, like I said, were treated the worst. Even compared to Black male slaves, they had the worst, because they had the hardship, they had the labor, and then they had to give labor, as in deliver babies. And they were, I was thinking about this as I was reading all of that. Black people in general, you have to understand, we are strong people. You think about all the shit our ancestors went through, the Great Passage, slavery, all the conditions, the disease, the abuse, the outright murder, all to make it through. Like, we made it through, like our ancestors made it through. So we're made of strong stuff. And I don't know, I was thinking, I wish that everyone could know that. All levels of the socioeconomic spectrum, like, know that you're strong and powerful. You come from, like, good stuff. The system just has so many things in place to have us forget that and make us feel worthless and make us feel less than. It's in the media, it's in the movies, it's in the music, and it's in politics. And this is a prime example of that.
I mean, people are already acknowledging that, like, we kind of need a playbook for people who may not get what all that means, like everything that you've been talking about. Corporations are starting to understand what all that means. It's not just like, it's not about pancakes. It's about a long history of racism and sexism. There's still a lot more. Like, there was a Murdoch paper that like did an editorial cartoon, and they referred to like Kamala as a little brown girl who just like, and I passed you on to this little brown girl and I'll go take a nap.
White man saying I'm gonna go take a nap while I let the, even though I'm what's the word, impetus, I can't say the word.
Infantile?
Are
you dumb, stupid, or dumb, huh?
Infantilizing. Oh, I think I just said it.
I love your surprise at that.
Yeah, but still sort of like making her less than like the text of that comic, yet still the white man's going to go take a nap while the black woman does all the work. There's a responsibility that people need to be held accountable to, and we're starting to see it, which is good, but it's yeah, it needs to be a lot more.
The most offensive, and once again, this is, I just shudder at saying this, but like Rush Limbaugh referring to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as Joe and Ho. You could buy a t-shirt on Amazon, they just took it down. But I mean, talk about another like black female stereotype right there. Like
yeah, and based on something that happened 25, 30 years ago. Now I will say, when I heard that back then Kamala hooked up with the mayor who was 30 years her senior, I was like, okay, zaddy moment. Get it, Kamala. But that's neither here nor there. Like, that was 25 years ago, and also he had been separated for 10 years from his wife.
Also, she's done so many things. Like, one, both of her parents who were immigrants had doctorates. She herself had like top level like education. She accomplished like so many different offices, and Limbaugh just put her down, minimizing her, and also like the idea that all women just have to sleep their way to their top. Like, anything they accomplish isn't because they're smart. It's just because they have, what's between their legs is all that matters. Like, it is so sexist and racist.
And they think they're being effective, but I feel like something like that will backfire. Like, surely women who identify as Republican or far-right, they still take issue with a statement like that. You think Kellyanne is just gonna be like, yeah, that hoe?
It's the wrap.
It's gonna be trolls, and like I think this is the kind of idea. Like, this is just gonna be like the part of the Republican Party that is the troll end of it. Will love this.
And let's not forget, you reminded me, Beth, the man who called Kamala a hoe is a recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom given to him by Trump.
And let's remember, that is the highest honor a civilian can get.
Who else has that, Beth?
Oh, who else has that? Let's say, for example, Rosa Parks. Or like Mother Teresa.
You put Limbaugh in the same camp as Mother Teresa and Rosa Parks.
Native Americans, how many Indians were killed by the arrival of the white man through disease and war? And how many people have died since the white man arrived here due to lung cancer, thanks to the Indian invented custom of smoking tobacco? Who are the real killers here? Where are our reparations?
Like, just let that marinate for a little bit.
And this would be the man that just called a politician a hoe. And it's pushing that idea, and pushing that kind of sexism and racism.
Yeah. And I'm not going to say that Rosa Parks or Mother Teresa never called nobody no hoe, but they haven't done it publicly, at least.
You a stupid hoe. You a stupid hoe. You a stupid hoe. You a stupid hoe.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to picture that. And I'm like,
Rosa had, she's had a little to do what she did, so I know she probably looked at someone like, just kidding, jokes. Rosa Parks People Foundation or whatever. I love her. Thank you for.
Yes, thank you for like starting the bus boycott and like helping to push racial equality and civil rights movement. So thank you, Rosa Parks.
We celebrate you, Queen.
So Trump, right as soon as he was announced, floated the idea that he wasn't sure if she could actually run for president. This is exactly what he said about Obama. And once again, that is a racist thing to say. That is prejudice. And so, and by the way, in case you need to check, you can find her birth certificate online. She was born in California. She is an American. So
there's a word that collectively describes what we're talking about, the misogynoir. Collectively, specifically racist against specifically Black women. Misogynoir.
Oh.
Is what is occurring with the announcement of Kamala.
Well, it's also women have an expectation in general, like all female politicians. Kind of the common knowledge is what they in the political realm is that a woman has to be likable for people to vote for her. You can think that like, a guy is a dick, but you'll still vote for him.
The whole code switch thing, like that's real. I mean, even me as a black, as a black,
right.
I've done the code switch. You kind of have to.
What do you mean by code switch?
Code switch is when you go from like being black, you sort of make yourself, you tone yourself down in white spaces. Like if you're out socially, you're meeting a new group of people for the first time and they're all majority white. You don't know where they come from or what they feel or how they're going to react. So you kind of temper the group dynamic before you fully express like your full personality, your full blackness, I should say.
You guys feel you have to do in your everyday life code switching?
The thing about code switching is that I feel like black people have to do it all the time. Yeah. And especially if you're something else plus black, which of course we all are because we're human, I'm a black homosexual. Sometimes, like when I go and get my hair cut in certain parts of the world, I gotta butch it up. Right. Sometimes when I go into a job interview, I gay it up because I think that makes me more accessible. Yeah. And it's like, it's a weird thing because we all do it because it's a survival tactic, but it feels weird, man. It just feels, there is an inauthentic part of it. And I think the burden that black people have, that people who, don't have to do it, is that we have to do it all the time. When we go to the grocery store, when we are driving, when we are, at work, when we're at home, when we're out, everywhere we have to code switch. And it is exhausting.
Hello, how are you? Oh yes, the weather's lovely. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I was at a journalism panel and I was asking questions to people covering the election, and they were saying who their favorite candidate was. And then I pointed out the fact that it was primarily white candidates that they were talking about. I think media forgets sometimes how much they push people's thought, like how these ideas get disseminated into the public.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's where you go to for information. No one's actually going into the archives of, court cases. Tell me what court case was precedent for this current, give me the information. They're not searching the files of the Supreme Court themselves. I mean, some very people who are very nuanced and are into that super nerdy will go look at actual sources, but most of us get our information from the media and the stories that they write.
So like how they frame it is important, like which candidates you write more about. Because I mean, there's definitely an idea in the 2016 election, like part of the reason that Trump became the top Republican candidate was because the media kept covering him. But the media just couldn't help it. It was just like, oh, this, like, he said, what? That's an outrageous lie. And so they put the lie out there. And then like he changed the story again. So like it was just good writing.
I mean, in any election, it's name recognition, right? And name recognition, that's from the exposure in the media. And so, yeah, the media controls a lot. If they determine that name recognition, which is like one of the top things that needs to happen for anybody to be successful in any kind of election.
Right now, I think most of us think media is like they are far left leaning, or if you're like, and then some people have a view of Fox that is definitely right, and that like all media has an agenda. But most traditional journalists have an idea of objective method, which means that like they try to just show the facts and show both sides. So that's a training for most journalists. And they're also like, you can get fired for misspelling a name. So they may be moving fast and be fast paced, but a lot of these news organizations, even if they're doing it imperfectly, are trying that method. So, I mean, most journalists are not trying to push aside. They're just trying to cover what they see. Even if you're not trying to be biased, like how you grow up, like what you're perceiving in the world, like how much money you make affects how you see it and how you see things. So, I mean,
yeah, your lens is colored by your life experience for sure.
And if your newsroom doesn't have much color to it, I mean, you're going to have a problem where they may not see that, like, for example, like we were just talking about the Aunt Jemima thing. They may not understand that entire history of what that means. Yeah. Or like the subtle things that like, oh yeah, this is so sexist. If you only have like male reporters covering it, they may not pick up on that because it's kind of based on your experience.
Yeah, and it's not just in journalism, like media and even entertainment, which is my industry. You see some imagery sometimes and you're like, who greenlit to put that on stage, do you not see how problematic that is? And for the sake of whatever, I won't give specific examples, but there's times throughout my 10-year career, 13, if you include dance, where I've been like, okay. I'm not paid to have any artistic input on this, but wow. Okay, moving on. We'll tell one funny story. So this was some time ago, but basically they were doing a setup, and the actors and artists on stage were Black, and I was seeing a blue light being put on them, and I don't know anything about lighting and stage lighting.
Yeah.
I made a passing comment like, "Oh, Beyonce says don't use blue light on black skin." Like I remember seeing that in a documentary or something.
And I hate all that ugly blue light. I'm a black girl. You can't put blue lights on black girls.
And who knows if that even he really meant that, or if that's a rule. But for me, I was like, well, Beyonce says it, so it's true. People were like, what? Wait, is that true? Where did you hear that? I was just the show Insecure on HBO. It's that's a Black show, all Black cast for the most part. No, actually, it is an all Black cast. They've been getting accolades for their lighting, and the lighting designer has said, there are specific considerations for people of color, for actors of color, and we are using them, and that's why visually people are drawn to the show. And so that's why I've got my little pink light off to the side, because pink light, the melanin poppin'.
I was also gonna say we haven't given a shout out to Kamala Harris's Asian American side. Her Indian side. Immigrants that are Indian, it's a big population in the United States and growing, and is becoming kind of more powerful. So, but Kamala does say that she identifies as being Black. So she is biracial, but I mean, she does identify. If when you're biracial, you're kind of both sides, really. So, and I remember, even though I do see myself as half white, I would always choose some minority because that's how I present. Like growing up, I was a constant question of like, where are you from? And I'm like, Ohio. And they're like, no, where are you really from? You're something.
I knew you were mixed with something. People love to say that. Oh, I knew you were mixed with something.
Do come here.
I've heard that before.
One of the people I work with in the industry, a colleague, he said that like there really is not a pipeline problem. There are a lot of people coming up, young journalists that are representing underrepresented communities, but like as you get higher and higher up, and this is across all industries, it tends to become more white and male continually. So, and journalism is a very competitive industry. So like anything that's not an advantage can hurt you and get you fired because they're firing everyone. So like, but I mean like right now, all of her coverage has been like, she will be the first. They haven't really talked about her record at all.
But at the root of that, and I don't know because I'm not in the industry, but at the root of that, is that just clickbait and like getting the traffic to the sites and getting the views? I mean, there's a point where we are now where journalistic integrity is one thing, but you've also got to pay the bills and pay for the lights to be on. So, I don't know, you tell me, forums that you've been a part of, has that been discussed? Like, how do we maintain our integrity when we know we need to like use buzzwords and search engine optimization to get people to our sites?
Before when I started working journalism, there was church and state, and you never talk about money. But now it's just a reality because like they just aren't making ends meet. That's why you end up with these huge collaborations of like magazine companies are all kind of, they own a whole bunch of different magazines. You may know the magazine name, but you don't know who owns it. Like ABC and Disney are together. Like there's these huge groups to try to make it profitable. So there is kind of a question about getting clicks, but it's more about just industry survival. It's less about clicky stuff. Some journalists are judged on how many people hit up their story, but that's not true for all newsrooms. But some of these patterns, just like covering up, like just saying that like, oh, she's the first blah, blah, blah. She's the first Asian American vice presidential candidate. It's the journalist also has the idea that it's anything new, but she's the first, like, but how many people are there that are of color that are in these kind of positions?
I think what you're trying to say is that they're making a big deal about that she's the first Black vice presidential candidate of a major ticket, because there has been one before her. They're focusing on her being the VP candidate, but they're not focusing on the bigger systemic problem, which is that it's 2020 and this is the first major ticket candidate that's a Black woman. And also there's still a huge lack of representation in Congress. Like Congress is now doesn't represent the America as a whole. If you look at how the demographics of the country, they're not represented fully in Congress. Like they're burying the lead. Is that a term they say? Like,
yes, burying the lead, like the main point. So good job.
But one thing that I do worry about when it comes to, because again, I think we can agree that like the white female vote is going to be very important in this election. And sometimes I wonder if there's something in the subconscious that's going to be like, the first female vice president can't be Black. Can it? Should it? Because if you think back historically, when white women were fighting for the right to vote alongside Black men, there was that moment where Black men started to get more traction to get the vote before white women. And there was a moment where white women were like, wait a minute, should that be the case? And the, what was it, the Equal Rights Association that was fighting for the suffrage, they split into two groups. One group was saying, yes, go forward, like Frederick Douglass, and go forward with pushing for the, was it the 19th Amendment? No. But like when they get into that voting booth, are they really going to pull the trigger for Biden-Harris?
I mean, BIPOC members of the feminist community don't see like the representation. Sometimes it's just always being from a white female perspective and not about the experience of being BIPOC and female. Because you have two things working against you, not just one, just being your gender. So, I mean, even if they have good intentions, they just may not see that perspective. Like, they just don't see that perspective. They don't understand why this thing is important. Some of them just think that they're right and they're like, yeah, I'm liberal. So like, of course I'm right. And they think that they're not prejudiced, even though they are.
And a prime example of that is the Central Park situation with the bird watcher and the white, she was a liberal, and she's the one that was going to weaponize the police against the Black man who was basically just following the park rules. So that's who I'm afraid, that's who I worry about. It's like that type of liberal.
That kind of like, I don't see race kind of thing. Because it's easy if you see yourself as being liberal and beyond it to just be like, I just don't see race. But you're also not understanding, that becomes part of your identity. And if anyone tells you that you're not, like that's kind of attacks how you see yourself.
Yeah, and if you live in this bubble where you're protected and everything you do is great and everybody gets a ribbon and you're never even questioned, you're not questioned ever as a privileged leftist white woman until a Black man approaches you in the park and says that you need to put a leash on your dog. You don't really know who you are until that moment. And she found out who she is and had a reckoning.
What she deserves.
And that was a gross generalization. Just let me clear the air for like all my white female friends, because I have quite a few. Love you, girls.
Yeah. Tech is very white bro-ish. So white bro and primarily liberal. So like there's a lot of talk about being like, we're so liberal, like, oh yeah, like we believe in diversity. But then when it comes down to it, it's like, it's all just like what I like to call tech-testosterone a lot of times. Yeah, there can be a cold shoulder sometimes, even though they feel that they're beyond it, they aren't. But I just, I just want to get my job done. Like, and I just can't, it's hard to unravel sometimes the toxicity that can happen.
Yeah, you got to pick your battles. And even working entertainment, you would think, oh, that's a fun, free liberal zone. But there's been so many times where something probably required a like pause. We need to talk about what was just said or what you just did to me or like what just happened, because that was problematic. Like there's so many times where that probably needed to happen. But like you said, I'm just like, you know what? Let me just do my job, keep it pushing. Is it worth the headache to like make this person see what they just did or said was an issue? Or like, do I want to, that's what I mean. Like there's always this extra burden when you're like a BIPOC person in a predominantly white space. There's always this internal debate. Do I want to be that, from their perspective, problematic Black employee that every time everything's about race, you always bring up race, why, like so sensitive to be that person, that provocative Black employee, that angry Black man. Do I want to like play that role? And 9 times out of 10 it's just like, you know what, let me just keep it pushing, clock in, clock out, and just let it go.
When Me Too happened, it was like, why did women not speak up before? It's because like until there was an entire movement, like you were the one who was going to get fired. Like you were the one who was going to lose a paycheck. You were also the one who may not find another job. Like, is speaking up worth like this kind of economic impact? It wasn't about not being strong, not seeing the wrong. It was having that balance. Like when there was enough power, there was a powerful enough movement where you could actually have that conversation and it could be exposed and it was part of the trend was seen, it became more worth it to speak up. There was less risk. I mean, it was still scary and still, you know, there was risk, but it was like there was hope that it was worth it.
Yeah. And that's why recently I was empowered to kind of speak truth to power about my experience because of the movement, you know. It was like, and actually the question was brought to me because of what's going on in the world. So I kind of was, the door was opened, and so I did decide to walk in. I put kind of like a leg through.
Yeah. So Ricky, I think there was one other topic that you wanted to talk about, Kamala Harris.
I'm wondering, are we expecting media outlets to push journalists to push Kamala and her history with the police, her sort of back and forth on her stance of the death penalty, and her sort of tough on crime stance with communities of color?
So I guess that kind of like as a question, like I don't know if we need to go into it. I think media outlets should, if they want to cover that, cover it. I think it will come out, especially more conservative outlets and conservative pundits in general do want to talk about her police record. So I think it will come out.
It's going to be an interesting back and forth because some of the things that he's trying to attack Kamala on, I think, are Senator Harris.
Yeah.
Are going to be the same things that he's probably for, or at least the Republican Party are trying to push, because their whole platform is going to be this tough on crime, safety first, protect hide your kids, hide your wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting debate. I do want to see her address it just for the optics of it. It doesn't have an effect, I don't think, for me as far as where I stand on voting, but I do think she owes it to the community to address it, give us an idea of where her mindset maybe was back then. There is some history there between her and the police unions.
Yeah, that was in 2000. I'm looking at it, the article. That's what I was doing just now. This is her first 3 years as district attorney in San Francisco. Harris' most controversial decisions came in 2004 when she declined to pursue the death penalty against the man who murdered San Francisco police officer Isaac Espinoza. So that's the case. I'm reading right now from Politico. And then Harris, after this, Harris was shunned by police unions for the next decade.
Okay, the next decade.
So there was some things where she was helping police. So, but it could also be that it was a political move because she was shunned by the police union for a decade, and police unions have often worked very closely with politicians. So, yeah. I mean, she needs, you know, like, but I mean, with so many different cases, you can read it a lot of different ways, and I think it's something that we have to address. Oh, wait. So going in with it, some advocates say Harris didn't do enough to address police brutality while she was Attorney General in California. So I think that's what you're kind of referring to, especially after she refused to investigate the police shooting of 2 Black men in 2014 and 2015. Anybody who's been part of the Black Lives Matter movement will wonder, like, is she going to really support the community on these protests?
Yeah, and I think it's a fair enough question, so hopefully she addresses it at some time before the vote. We have a new segment that we're introducing. Tell us about it.
Yes, we have a new segment that we're calling Don't Even with Democracy.
Don't even.
It's really fun to say. Don't even.
What's our first don't even?
In this crazy, chaotic year, like, don't even think about, like, waiting to the last minute to vote. It's going to take a long time.
Yes, and if you're voting by mail, just know your election day is not in November. Just make your election day like mid-October. Send that ballot in. Request it now. Most states are sending applications for requests for absentee or vote by mail. I'm in Ohio. I got mine already, so I'm going to send that in. So make sure you get that in if you're going to plan on voting by mail. Another service you can provide, I guess it can be a don't even not become worker.
That sucked. That one sucked. I mean, not like just the delivery of it, like not the idea.
The perfect, like the right words to use. Anyway, make sure that if you're available and able and willing, become a poll worker on election day. Most poll workers are over the age of 60 because that's just their jam. They love doing that and contributing to democracy. So with COVID, that could be an issue because a lot of them are in a category of people who are at a high risk of contracting it or having really serious deleterious effects of contracting COVID. So they are looking for young, vibrant bodies to work the polls. So yeah, it's really simple. You actually just go to the website that of your state that registers to vote, and there's a link right there on the homepage. At least for Ohio, it was register to vote, become a poll worker. It was really easy. So, and of course, always do your Googles. We'll see if we can put something in the description box below, links for becoming a poll worker. But yeah.
Don't even think about messing with the post office.
Don't even mess with the USPS.
Oh, we have to rely on the mail, and there's already going to be delays because there's going to be more mail with the election. And this is the time now that they started doing cutbacks and taking away mailboxes, cutting back hours for people who work at the post office, not covering any overtime, and taking away sorting machines. So it's all framed as a budget cut. But what that means is that a lot of votes wouldn't make it in time for the election. So a lot of people have seen this as voter repression.
Yes.
Yeah, and don't even think that mail-in and absentee are different things.
They're the same thing.
The thing too that this is going to undermine, like, regardless of how, if he loses, like, this has definitely put people's mind that it's because they can't trust mail-in voting. So I mean, so it makes it like, even if like Trump ends up losing, he can always say, oh yeah, but remember I planted that seed that like we can't trust the mail, even though he is for his own ballot.
Don't even try to delay the transfer of power if you lose the election.
Even if you're a Trump supporter, like, remember that these kind of things, like, they affect democracy itself. Voting is just a right. It is part of our country. So it doesn't matter if you support or don't support Trump. Always, like, don't even think about not defending democracy. Yeah, and also remember, don't even mess with the AARP. So we think that, like, yeah, don't even mess with the old people.
Don't even mess with our golden Buckeyes. Is that what they're called? They get, like, when I worked at Graders, they used to bring their little card, golden Buckeye card, and they would get discount off their ice cream. Butter pecan.
Because remember, like, most people who vote are over 60 or so. So they issued a statement that said, like, hey, like, we can't volunteer, like, we can't go vote because we're in a population that is, you know, like, that is in danger of catching COVID at a higher rate and it being deadlier. So, like, don't even mess with, like, we really like to vote. And we really don't want to be outside. So, like, don't even. So Cher, when she heard about all of this, she tweeted at the post office because she wanted to volunteer. And they ignored her. So she was like, okay, no, really, like, yes, I need to volunteer. And they still, like, kind of ignore her. And then, like, they did it one more time. But I feel like, in general, like, don't even, not let her, like, volunteer. Like, Cher. Like, I would love to see Cher at the post office. Like, that would make my heart sing.
Don't even ever deny Cher anything she wants. Yeah, so that's don't evens. What are some of your don't evens? Fire down in the comments below.
Thanks for listening to Gen XYZ.
So head on over to the Zending. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give a story time about how I found Reiki, or I should say how Reiki found me. Yeah, just a fun story. It involves Hong Kong, it involves Japan, it involves trekking around the world, and a lot of serendipity. So yeah, tune into the Zending for just a fun little light story time on how Reiki has influenced my life and how it found me.
Ooh, I love story time. So yeah, definitely check that out.
Links here, and then we're gonna, at the end of the video, you'll be able to see our previous videos. And also, don't forget, you're here, and if you lasted this long, or maybe you just jumped to this part, definitely subscribe. Like, bravo to you. You must like us because you watched the entire video. So go ahead and smash that subscribe button. Go ahead and like this video and leave a comment. Leave a don't even, or leave a gripe that you have, or leave a concern you have coming into the election. We'd love to start a conversation with you guys. So
yeah, and follow us at Gen XYZ on social media.
Perfect. Thanks for watching, and we'll see
Thank you. And we'll see you next time. Bye. Am I looking at you?
No, look at each other.
Okay. Okay, good. So stupid.
I don't know if that's gonna work.
I don't know. Okay, let's